Hey, welcome back everybody. Happy Sunday. Hope we're having a wonderful end of the week here and hopefully a great day of rest as we get prepared for the new week. Now, luckily Monday is a holiday, but still a very busy week ahead, especially in the weather department here, and that already beginning now with the start of the southern snow and ice system that is likely to move through the mid-Atlantic and up the east coast as well. Now, that's not the only thing we have to talk about. We still have big-time lake effect snow ongoing, very cold Arctic outbreak, and potentially another storm on the way going into this coming weekend, and that one could favor areas of the I-95 corridor. So I'll break all that down for you in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. Again, a lot of you are returning viewers who are not subscribed, so just make it easy on yourself. Hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell so you have the latest notifications every time I upload a video. Now, also like the video and make sure to comment. Let me know what you're seeing out there, especially our folks down here who are seeing those impacts from that very cold air, that snow, and that ice, which is really going to be a big section of the country. And you'll see that here in just a moment when we look at our watches and warnings. Now, outside of that, I do just want to say thank you. The growth has been very incredible, really from December now through much of January. The channel has been doing very well, and we're slowly but surely getting our way to that 10,000 subscriber point. So, again, that's a huge goal of ours, and I have no doubt we'll get there before all is said and done this winter. I think with all that said, though, let's go ahead and jump into it because, again, we do have a lot to discuss in today's video. Now, we'll start off with our infrared satellite here. And the first thing that we're going to look at, well, there's a couple areas, but I'll point out the first two that are really important, and then I'll point out the third, which is kind of just cool, if you ask me. All right, so first thing we're looking at here, we still have this kind of low pressure spinning away above the Great Lakes. That is still leading to big time winds here that are leading to a lot of problems in the lake effect snow department. In fact, I know Buffalo yesterday had some big time thunder snow, and in fact that playoff game was moved from, I believe today it was scheduled, to tomorrow just because of how dangerous the conditions are out here. And that wasn't even from the NFL. That was straight from Governor Hochul there in New York State, who said, we're just not going to do it. The travel is going to be too dangerous. We're just going to have to move it. So just to give you an idea of how big of a deal that is, it's not an easy decision to make to postpone an NFL playoff game, especially when you're dealing with Buffalo Bills fans. So if you're a Bills fan and part of Bills Mafia, I'm sure you might be a little disappointed, but again, it's for the best. So that's the first area. The second area that we are watching out for, back out here kind of towards the Central Plains, that is our storm that moved out of the Pacific Northwest and now is going to bring, once again, more snow and ice, but this time to areas in the southeast and eventually some snow up the I-95 corridor. So again, this is going to be a storm that brings the first snow and ice for a lot of folks this year. A lot of people who have not seen winter weather so far this winter, or really even last winter, are going to break that streak starting with this storm, and some of you could once again add on top of that again with that next storm going into this coming weekend, about a week from now. All right, watches, warnings, advisories. Again, it's busy out there. Luckily, radar, though, is a little more quiet today, so we can kind of get a quick breather before things pick back up going into kind of tonight and into tomorrow. Now, one thing I will say that makes me very happy as somebody who covers the weather is we really only have one storm at a time we're dealing with right now. It feels like all of January we've had like 4 storms moving in at the same time, or one right after another after another. Luckily, right now, we can spend most of the video really just talking about this one big storm and the Arctic air outbreak that it is also bringing with it. But kind of diving into these watches and warnings now, and I'll stop rambling. Up here in the Northeast, we've got some wind advisories and even some winter storm warnings and advisories here for the Buffalo area where we have those winter storm warnings. Same story for upstate New York, winter storm warnings. But outside of there, just some wind advisories and winter weather advisories as well for this kind of little piece of energy that's swinging on through here. We'll take a look at that in just a moment, but not just lake effect in the Northeast today. Areas further inland could see kind of some snow squalls, if you will, that aren't directly related to the winds coming off the lakes, but that, what it'll really do is set in stone that Arctic air behind, and you'll notice it's not far behind here in the central part of the country that we have all of these wind chill watches, warnings, and advisories stretching from Washington State all the way through Ohio, Kentucky, and even down into Texas and Oklahoma. So again, this air mass, it is slowly but surely working eastbound, and if you don't get quite hit by this one, as bad as some others, for example, areas in the southeast going to still get cold, but not nearly as cold as other parts of the country, don't get too excited because there's another Arctic air mass likely to move in with our next storm system going into next week. So again, that's kind of the Northeast and those winter weather advisories as well as those wind chill watches and warnings in the plains. Now, the other big area that I'm sure many of you are watching for this exact reason is from sections of Texas all the way up through Virginia, where we have winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings, as well as some ice storm warnings in place. Again, this is going to be a big time storm, and a lot of these folks have not seen much winter weather really over the past 2 years or so. That's going to change big time today and going into tomorrow. Basically, the entire state of Arkansas and Tennessee under winter storm warnings, for some snow and ice on the way. In areas south of there, winter weather advisories for some freezing rain and sleet that are also going to impact a lot of folks. And I expect these watches and warnings and advisories to get expanded up into the Northeast as well as we go into the next really 24 hours or so. All right, the first thing we're going to discuss here really quickly is the lake effect snow that is still ongoing. So let's go ahead and get this out of the way, and then we'll talk about that big time storm system. So again, if you're watching in Buffalo today, upstate New York, a lot of snow still on the way. I know you already got kind of slammed last night, but we're going to do it all again today. So that's going to happen throughout the day. Another thing I will mention, again, there's kind of a bit of a short wave in the atmosphere here. If you notice looking at the map, look at how these isobars are kind of kinking down this way. That just indicates to me that, again, we have a piece of energy kind of flying on through here, and that's why we're seeing snow outside of that lake effect. These are some snow squalls that are going to work through much of New York State this afternoon, even into northern New Jersey, into southern New York State, even through the Philadelphia area. Could see a couple snow showers this afternoon, and eventually this even moves through Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and even up into Maine during the afternoon and evening hours, where again we could get a quick burst of snow, but very cold temperatures on the backside as well, as again that's kind of the leading front of that Arctic air. Now this evening. You'll notice again we kind of dry out a little bit from that snow squall event, but still dealing with that lake effect snow through much of the Buffalo area into upstate New York. It's still snowing before I think finally we kind of get into our Monday afternoon, and the winds should shift enough that lake effect snow kind of dies down a little bit, but still ongoing up here into sections of upstate New York and into the Buffalo area. Now, all this that you see down here, we're going to discuss that in a minute. Don't worry, but just give me a moment because that's a part of our bigger storm. And again, we'll discuss those impacts here in just a moment. All right, snowfall totals over the next 48 hours. Again, our big winners here are going to be in upstate New York and back into the Buffalo area, where still another foot or two of snow is not out of the question. In fact, even likely, I think, especially in upstate New York here, coming off of some of these lakes. Again, could see some big time totals. Now, all this you see down here through Pennsylvania and kind of into New Jersey, southern New York, that is, again, mostly due to that snow squall kind of event moving on through this afternoon, but that's also picking up on a little bit of some of that snow likely to come with the next storm. So I think overall 1 to 2 inches is pretty likely for you folks to get kind of lucky with some of those snow squalls this afternoon, even down into the Massachusetts and Connecticut area, and even back into Vermont and New Hampshire. Again, kind of a heavy dosing of a quick burst of snow, very likely this afternoon. Alrighty, that is kind of the Northeast. Now let's take a look at the Midwest here and discuss some of the lake effect snow ongoing out here. Now again, the real winners out here are going to be the state of Michigan. So I kind of wish I could zoom this map in a little bit more, but either way, if you're watching in northern Michigan, the UP of Michigan, even some of those western shores of Michigan, you'll notice as I move this ahead into time, it's still snowing. And it's still snowing overnight tonight. It's still snowing kind of during the Monday afternoon hours there, again into extreme northern Michigan. But luckily, things, well, I say luckily, but they still kind of continue really throughout the next couple of days. You'll notice that snow still working on through kind of some of those isolated spots. Now, the big winners here, again, going to be right on the northern tip of Michigan and even into the UP area. Outside of there, though, things should stay relatively calm for much of the state in terms of snowfall totals. Now, snowfall over the next 48 hours, again, like I said, the big winner is going to be up into the northern tip of Michigan proper, and then into the UP as well, where another foot or more of snow is not out of the question. Now, cannot rule out some snow down here on the western shores as well, but I think most of this is already fallen by the time you've watched this video. Watching is not a word, but by the time you've watched this video, I think most of that's probably already fallen. Again, though, can't rule out a couple more inches here along the western shores as well. But again, just to kind of summarize, big winners, circled areas on your map here is where we still have most of the snow left to fall. Alrighty, so that's kind of what we're seeing out here with the lake effect snow that's still ongoing. Now let's discuss this big time storm system. And again, this one's going to have a lot of impacts for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So I think the best way to kind of discuss this is to kind of look at the overall synoptic setup that we're looking at and dealing with, and that should do a pretty good job of summarizing what we're going to see and why we're going to see it. So let's go ahead and dive into it. What I want you to notice this afternoon is what we're looking at here. Back out towards kind of the central part of the country and out west into the Rockies, we have a lot of energy moving on through. Again, all this is kind of left over from that storm that brought snow and ice into the Rockies and the PNW yesterday. Again, now kind of sliding further south and east. And to the north here, we have our polar jet stream, which is bringing, very cold Arctic air kind of supplying into the country. So we've got two pieces of energy, a very cold piece and a bit more of a moist piece, if you will. Now what happens as we get kind of through the next couple of days is all of this energy, we've got multiple rounds here, you'll notice, slowly but surely cross this southern section of the country where that Arctic air is locked into place. And that's why we're going to get rounds and waves of this wintry precipitation. This is going into Monday afternoon. You'll notice again, here's still that Arctic air being supplied, and we still have areas of energy kind of sliding on through here, going into our Monday afternoon depicted here, and eventually going into even our Tuesday afternoon. Now, it's at this point going into Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday that we kind of get a secondary part of the storm. Again, at the beginning, now through kind of Monday, we've just got a couple weaker pieces of energy swinging on through. But as we go into kind of Tuesday afternoon, you'll notice this trough that is supplying that very cold air really starts to dig southward, just meaning that cold air is moving further south and that energy involved with that cold air is also moving further south. Now, as that is happening, you'll notice we have a little bit of a shortwave down here in the Gulf of Mexico. And what is likely to happen is these two are going to work in tandem a little bit here. You'll notice this is Tuesday afternoon. Again, we've got very cold air in place here. I know you can't really see that red line very well, but kind of where we have this big troughing right here, that's where we have that cold air in place. And then we have, again, that secondary piece of energy now starting to work its way up the coast. And eventually it's going to do so kind of right through the I-95 corridors where these two are going to be the closest. Now, unfortunately, they're not completely linking up. If they were to do that, we would have a big-time snowstorm on our hands. And we'll watch for the potential for that later. Again, next weekend, the second storm might do it. But this one, just a little bit weaker, and these two pieces of energy aren't quite connecting. And because of that, this is going to be more of a marginal event for most of the I-95 corridor. But again, areas further south and east, kind of in the Tennessee River Valley where we get rounds of energy, could see more of a moderate to even high impact event, kind of relative to what you're used to. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into it. We'll start in the southern Great Plains. Again, a place that is going to be impacted, sure enough, here with some wintry weather as well as some very just cold air in general. So we'll go ahead and start this afternoon. Again, I think that first piece of energy kind of gets going Sunday afternoon here today. You'll notice light snow likely breaking out for much of Oklahoma, eventually getting into Arkansas. This is about the time that we're getting into 2, 3 o'clock local time this afternoon. And again, we've got snow breaking out through central northern Arkansas into northeastern Oklahoma there, maybe even extreme southern Missouri. And to the south of there where we have a bit of a warm nose in place, just meaning that there's air that is above freezing right above our heads, could lead to some sleet and freezing rain falling here through southern Arkansas, northeast Texas, and northern Louisiana this afternoon. And going into overnight tonight, that snow shield slowly works off east towards Tennessee, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama. And we'll discuss those areas a little more in depth on the next map. For now, though, let's just kind of focus on kind of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana here. Again, though, overnight tonight, sun setting at this point, and we've got even more precipitation getting thrown back into this very shallow Arctic air at the surface, and because of that, we're going to have what is going to be very close to an all-out ice storm here for a lot of folks here, I think, near the Texarkana area, northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and really just much of East Texas. In fact, as we go further ahead here, by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, more of this precipitation gets thrown back into that Arctic air, and we've got a widespread freezing drizzle and freezing rain falling into eastern Texas, central and northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and even getting into central Mississippi here, again, by the time we're waking up on our Monday. Now, throughout the day Monday, it's going to be much more of the same, just ongoing freezing drizzle, freezing rain. And this is going to accrete pretty quickly, I think, for a lot of folks here. This is going to be relatively light precipitation, meaning once it hits the ground, it's going to have time to freeze. It's not going to really have to fight with a lot of other heavy precipitation kind of moving it around. It's going to, again, freeze very quickly. So travel is going to be very tough in these areas. If you can avoid it, do not travel. Really starting tonight, going into tomorrow, and then this is tomorrow evening. You'll notice still some of that freezing drizzle continuing before finally clearing out going into our Tuesday morning. Now I say clearing out, and I do mean it will probably stop. I guess raining is what it'll look like, but it'll be freezing rain or sleet. That will stop falling from the sky. However, that cold air is not going anywhere. It's staying around. So again, things are going to stay slick through much of this week in this part of the country, and there'll probably be widespread long-term delays and cancellations for schools and plenty of other businesses, I imagine. As again, roads are just going to be very treacherous here, and this is quite far south in the country, so we're not quite equipped with maybe some of the same materials other parts of the country might be. All right, looking at total ice here. Now, this is the model I just showed you precipitation-wise. National Weather Service going with a little bit less than this, but I would not be surprised to see it get a little bit closer to some of these totals. And you'll notice these are some pretty big-time totals at that. Some of these totals here into southern Arkansas, extreme northeastern Texas, and northern Louisiana, getting up past 1/4 of an inch of ice. And once we see that, power outage is going to be a big-time problem, travel near impossible. In a lot of these areas. And again, it might not get quite this high, but I think 1/4 of an inch of ice is going to be possible. Some of these totals showing 3/10, 4/10 of an inch. I think 1/4 of an inch, again, a little bit closer to reality. But again, once you get past 1/10 of an inch, that's already when problems begin. So back here into eastern Texas, southern Texas, more of an isolated event, not so widespread. But still icy conditions likely for much of Monday into many of these places, including just really south central Texas in general, even down towards the Mexico border. All right, so that's the icefall total in some of these states. Looking at snowfall, again, also going to be a concern here. I think today is going to be the big snow day for Oklahoma, with a couple of inches likely, maybe here into northeastern Oklahoma, but really the real winners will be much of central Arkansas here. And this is straight from the National Weather Service. This is their forecast. They're showing about 4 inches or so for much of the Little Rock area here into this kind of stretch of southern and central Arkansas, while northern Arkansas maybe about 2 to 3 inches of snow. And I think that's pretty realistic. Totals maybe a little less than this, especially in northern Arkansas. I'm not sure we're going to have quite enough precipitation to get to maybe 3 inches, but 2 inches I think is a pretty safe bet for many folks here. And to the south here through kind of northern Louisiana and northeastern Texas, dusting to an inch of kind of snow and sleet is not out of the question. Alrighty, that is kind of the south central part of the country. Now let's look at the southeast, another place that is going to get impacted quite heavily by this snow and ice, and let's go ahead and move this ahead at a time. Again, this is this afternoon. Here's that snow beginning to work into Arkansas, and eventually over into the evening hours of tonight, it's now snowing into much of the state of Tennessee, southern half of Kentucky here, even kind of the Paducah area seeing some snow, and also some snow into the extreme northern counties here of kind of Mississippi and Alabama, up here into the Huntsville area, the Muscle Shoals area. Could see some snow out of this very easily overnight tonight. Again, this is about 7, 8 o'clock local time. And you'll notice as we go through the overnight, just kind of this band of heavy snow or moderate snow just continues to kind of sit in place and slowly expand, moving off towards the north and to the east here. So this is about midnight tonight, maybe a little bit after. It's still snowing good through much of Tennessee, especially kind of Nashville points south and east here, and again still snowing in northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, but also some light snow now working into West Virginia, Virginia proper, the mountains of North Carolina, likely to see some snow overnight tonight. And that just continues here overnight, and by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, we've got, again, a really pretty big-time winter storm ongoing. We've got snow falling now into Virginia, areas around D.C., south of there, really much of the state seeing some light snow, I think, during the morning hours of Monday here. Still snow, a little bit lighter now, back into much of Tennessee, and then once again still snowing into northern Mississippi and Alabama. And in fact, I think northern Mississippi could be a bit of a place that isn't talked about a lot, but could get some big-time snow totals out of this. That's one of those areas that we have enough Arctic air that's deep enough and enough persistent moisture that half a foot of snow I don't think is out of the question by any means there into a lot of those communities there into the northern half of Mississippi, and really the extreme northern half of Mississippi. All right, again, this is waking up Monday morning, and we've still got a winter storm on our hands, but as we move this into kind of Monday afternoon, this is whenever we're going to get more waves of that precipitation to kind of move on through. You'll notice kind of rebuilding some of that precipitation back towards the Memphis area and eventually working back into Nashville Monday afternoon, still snowing into much of southern Tennessee, up into maybe even the Greensboro area of North Carolina, not out of the question. I think we could see some flakes fly during the day Monday, and still snowing into central Virginia. And now you'll notice, again, these waves of precipitation just continue to work on through, and by the time we're getting into Monday evening, this is when the storm finally kind of begins to kick itself on out here. So Monday's easily going to be the climax of this event with rounds of wintry precipitation. But here we go into kind of overnight Monday and Tuesday. This is when that Arctic air now once again tries pushing back further east and kind of pushes this energy off with it. So I think overnight Monday here, we could see some ice working into some pretty far south sections of Louisiana, Mississippi, maybe even into the Birmingham area. Could see some freezing drizzle, freezing rain working on through. Snow continuing, though, into eastern Tennessee, into the Tri-Cities from Johnson City, Jefferson City, Elizabeth City, and even up towards Mountain City there. All kind of cities you guys have there in eastern Tennessee. I just realized everything's got the word city in it, so I guess you kind of know you're in the big city. Anyway. Again, now this is going into about midnight on Monday to Tuesday. You'll notice that precipitation shield slowly but surely working off east here. It's still snowing good in Virginia, West Virginia at this time, but starting to taper off from Nashville, Memphis, Jackson, Birmingham, drying on out here. And by the time we're waking up Tuesday morning, this is whenever things are going to kind of clear out for much of the southeast. Now, likely still some scattered drizzle here, I think, through the Carolinas, where unfortunately, for us snow lovers here, that Arctic air is just still struggling to get over the Appalachia chain. It will do so, but not until all of this precipitation is gone later Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday. All right, let's take a look at ice and snow totals in this part of the country as well. Again, I think this is probably a little overdone, but nonetheless here through kind of central Alabama and into northeast Georgia and even back into central Mississippi, I'd say about 1/10 of an inch of ice is going to be more widespread. Some of these totals are a little higher than that, but a glaze to 1/10 of an inch from Birmingham up into north central Alabama, into northwestern Georgia, I think could see some good ice out of this. And even back into central Louisiana. So again, travel going to be a problem here. Isolated power outages is going to be a problem. And again, just if you can avoid it, do not travel on Monday and really even into Tuesday as well. But of course, follow your local National Weather Service for the most updated winter weather advisories for any travel impacts. All right, now in this part of the country, snow is going to be more of a kind of impact than maybe the ice from Tennessee up through kind of Kentucky and the Virginias. And you'll notice from the National Weather Service here, a big area of some pretty impressive snowfall totals. About 4 to 6 inches for much of this area of central Tennessee, even up into northeastern Tennessee. Again, 4 to 6 inches, pretty widespread. But also look at northern Mississippi here. Again, some of these places could see more than half a foot of snow, not out of the question, as we kind of get prolonged periods of that snow combined with that very cold air. Again, that snow will pile up quickly, and I wouldn't even be surprised to see some places get maybe past 8 inches of snow there in extreme northern Mississippi, which is obviously a big-time storm for this part of the country. Now, Nashville, Memphis, I think about 3 to 5 inches is going to be kind of your sweet spot. Up here into northwestern Tennessee, a little bit less than that, maybe 1 to 3 inches of snow for you folks. Now, one thing you'll notice is this gets stopped very quickly at the Appalachia chain. Unfortunately, again, that cold air just struggling to get over and not really enough precipitation getting over the mountains as well, that this is just going to be more of a Tennessee Valley event than anything. All right, let's discuss now kind of the northern mid-Atlantic here and kind of into the northeast where, again, we are going to see snow out of this. Luckily, not much of an ice event here, more of a snow event than anything else. So here we go. This is our latest NAM model. So any kind of precipitation you see on this, just expect it to be more scattered. The NAM will often likes to overdo the precipitation, so I will use that as kind of a leading indicator here, but I think it does a good job of showing where the general band of snow will be. So here we go. This is waking up Monday morning. Again, I think scattered light snowfall likely through much of West Virginia and Virginia, even potentially into the Triad of North Carolina. Can't rule out some flurries in Greensboro. But here we go, going into kind of Monday afternoon, and that band of snow continues now into central and northern Virginia, seeing some pretty good snow out of this, even up eventually into the D.C. area throughout the day, Monday into Monday afternoon. You'll see that band of snow now working into Baltimore and even into Washington, D.C. Now, this storm's going to be a little different than the past couple. The past couple we've been talking about, is it going to be cold enough? Is it going to be are we going to have that rain snow line overtake the D.C.-Baltimore area? Well, this one's different. It'll be cold enough. The real question will be, do we have enough precipitation to kind of squeeze out of the atmosphere here in such a, cold, shallow Arctic air mass? This model, though, and many of them say, yes, we do. Now, this is going into about midnight, Monday into Tuesday. Now that band of snow shifting northward, so we're drying out into central and southeastern Virginia, where we could pick up a quick dusting or inch of snow. But it's north of there, into Maryland, West Virginia, eastern Kentucky here, and into Pennsylvania eventually. during the morning hours of Tuesday that this storm kind of begins to work on in. Now, again, this is about the time we're waking up on Tuesday. We could see a quick switch over to maybe some snow or, excuse me, to some sleet or freezing rain, but I really think much of the I-95 corridor here is going to be snow the entire time. I think this model is struggling a little bit, maybe with that rain-snow line here. But here we go, Tuesday afternoon, snow now working up into much of the northeast, even I think into the I-95 corridor. Again, I think this model might be underdoing it a little bit. And if I change it over to the GFS here, I think it might do a little bit of a better job here. Yeah, you'll notice this is waking up Tuesday. Notice that rain-snow line much further off to the south and east here. And we've got snow falling through much of the I-95 corridor, from D.C. through Baltimore, up through Philadelphia into New York, and through much of Long Island, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Boston. Just a good light to moderate snowfall through much of the day Tuesday. And you'll notice kind of as we get into the afternoon, it becomes a little bit more scattered in nature. Now we'll have to watch this. I would not be surprised to see this continue to stay a little bit more of a stronger band of snow here. Again, from D.C. up through the I-95 corridor, through Philadelphia, New York City, Hartford, Providence, and into Boston. I think you folks could see a little bit more snow than, again, a lot of these models are projecting for Tuesday afternoon. But either way, by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, we should really clear out and see nicer conditions. Now, total snowfall, again, that model didn't show a lot, but I think the National Weather Service is onto something here with their forecast. A good 1 to 3 inches for much of the I-95 corridor from Boston down through D.C., which I know in previous years, if we say 1 to 3 inches, might not sound like a lot, but it's been so long since we've had a widespread kind of I-95 storm that this one could, feel like a bigger deal than maybe it looks like on paper. So again, a lot of folks here, 1 to 3 inches through much of the Northeast. Alrighty, so that's kind of the Northeast and the Southeast and really that storm as a whole. Now let's very quickly talk about the Arctic air because it is going to be a problem. Already very cold through much of the country. That continues so through much of this week. This is tomorrow afternoon. Again, the entire central part of the country well below average. And again, I say it every video, but this map is showing how far below what your average temperature is. So if your average temperature is 50 in the afternoon on Monday, and this says minus 36, that does not mean it's 36 below zero. It means subtract 36 from 50, which if I can do mental math here, is somewhere in the teens. So I think about 14 degrees it would be a high there. So just kind of using, Kansas here as an example. But again, that's what this map shows, not actual temperatures. But we'll notice that this cold air continues to kind of lock into place. This is Tuesday afternoon, still very cold, but also slowly working eastbound. And by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, we're once again starting to cool down big time into the southeast. And one thing I will mention is we're going to get a little bit of air mass modification here. And no, that's not a fancy government strategy to kind of overtake your life. This is just meaning that some of that warm air that was already in place is going to kind of erode just exactly how cold this Arctic air is. And we're going to see temperatures more in the 10 to 20 degrees below average compared to the 30 to 40 degrees below average mark here going into Wednesday, into Thursday, and then eventually later on next week, another Arctic air mass likely moves on in. And we'll take a look at that here with this map. Alright, so as I've been talking about, this is not going to be the only storm that we're watching, the one that is currently ongoing and likely to happen through the next couple of days. Another storm has kind of set its sights on the country here going into later this coming week and into the weekend. And here's how it's going to start. We're going to get another piece of kind of Arctic air to likely dive southward, and with that, a very impressive trough here going into kind of our Friday afternoon depicted here. Now, I've talked about this plenty of times. The way troughs work is you get this air that kind of flows into it, and then you get air that flows out of it. And just to kind of summarize what normally happens when that happens, not quite sure that's correct English either, but that's okay. Either way, the normal setup that happens here is we get high pressure on kind of the left-hand side of these troughs and low pressure on the right side of these troughs, and a lot of cold air kind of in between and on the back side. So obviously if we get a setup like that, and we do have low pressure that forms here on this side of the trough, and we have very cold air in place, that could spell, a situation where we see some sort of snowstorm here into the Ohio River Valley, Tennessee River Valley, into the Mid-Atlantic, maybe even into the Northeast going into next weekend. Now, to show this to you in another way, there's a couple pieces of energy on the table here. The first one I'll show you is back here towards the Pacific Northwest, another storm system likely to try to get going here, circled on your map there. And let's just kind of watch what happens with that storm. You notice here we go into the weekend, it dives through the Rockies, and eventually going into this coming Friday, or really Thursday into Friday, again, that Arctic air mass moving southward, and we've still got this piece of energy down here now likely causing some lift in the atmosphere. So we could see once again another snowstorm for some similar areas here going into this weekend. And as I talked about earlier, I think these two pieces of energy have a better chance of hooking up than maybe what we're going to see over the next 72 hours or so along the East Coast. So here we go. You'll notice right here we've got again, this trough here, working on it, and here's that piece of energy. And they're now getting very close and kind of beginning to work in tandem a little bit and phase together and form a little bit of a stronger storm system up the coast. And that also followed by very cold Arctic air here going into next weekend. Now, just to show this to you on our ensemble mean, this is the European ensembles. You'll notice, here we go. This is that first storm. Here's that low pressure developing off the coast this kind of early this week with that snow we're going to see along the I-95 corridor. As I move this further ahead into time, though, here we go into this coming weekend, and here comes that storm. You'll notice this is Thursday morning, again working now through the southern part of the country, and we've got cold air to the north. And eventually that crosses once again through the southern half of the country here, through Tennessee and kind of Alabama and into Georgia, South Carolina, and eventually moves off the coast here through the mid-Atlantic and into the northeast, where we could have enough ingredients working together here to bring some sort of snow. Now, a map you know I love to show our chances of at least an inch of snowfall here. This is starting into the Thursday time frame. Snow chances increasing once again in the Ohio River Valley. And eventually, by the time we get into Friday, Saturday, snow chances really increasing. Again, from the Ohio River Valley into the northeast and even into the northern mid-Atlantic. And those snow chances hang around for a while through next weekend before finally we clear on out. All right, so what exactly could this look like on radar? Again, this is not a forecast, just kind of a general idea of what this storm could look like. And here we go, Thursday afternoon. Here's the storm system itself, moving out of the Rockies and eventually linking up here with that cold air. And we've got snow breaking out into the Ohio River Valley, even into the mid-Atlantic come Thursday and Friday, and eventually even into the northeast, snow breaking out here Friday afternoon. And that continues and even could turn into a little bit of a heavier storm here as that low pressure cranks up going into Friday and into Saturday before finally moving on out, I think, by the time we get into next Sunday. Now, another thing you will notice here on this map is look at these kind of blue isobars on your map. This is very cold Arctic air diving southward. So cold air is going to really lock in, I think, in about the 7 to 10 day time frame. Obviously, it's going to be cold this week, but it could be even colder after that in the east, as this air mass has a little bit more time to quickly swing on through and is less likely to be kind of modified quicker by some of those modification mechanisms there in the atmosphere. Alright, so again, a lot going on out there, a lot of busy stuff, snowstorm, ice storm, lake effect, and then the Arctic air all really summarizing much of this January pattern, and again, that likely to continue through at least the next 7 to 10 days. Now for you warm weather fans who are maybe tired of talking about all this winter weather, I think about 10 days out, 10 to 15 days, we could have a ridge working back into the eastern half of the country, and that could support a little bit of a warm-up. So we'll definitely watch that and see if that is something that keeps on showing up in the models. But for now, it's a lot of winter weather to talk about. Alrighty, well with that said, hope you have a great rest of your Sunday out there, and I'll see you all tomorrow.